going?
Good, good, thanks.
That's good. Firstly, welcome to the call and thank you for making the time to have a chat with me today.
No worries.
As I mentioned, the purpose of this call is just for us to talk through your experience of working with me as your buyer's agent to purchase your recent property, and really for you to just share, what you liked, what you didn't like, and if there was anything I could have done differently.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good.
Okay, cool. So firstly, yeah, congratulations on your recent purchase. How are you feeling about it all?
Thanks. Yeah, good. I mean, it happened so much faster than I thought it would.
Yeah.
So I feel really great about it. It's been a really easy process. I've got no complaints.
How long did you think it would take?
I mean, I guess this is my first property, right? I didn't really have a huge amount of context, but I had in my mind that we might be looking for weeks to months before we found somewhere that I liked, rather than sort of days to weeks. But yeah, I didn't have the mental context of how long it would take. It just feels like it happened a lot faster than I expected.
Okay. Yep. Did you want it to happen that fast, or were you hoping that it would go on for a bit longer?
I don't think I wanted it to drag out. No, I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy that we got it ticked off the list. It's not something, I think if it was a personal property for me to live in, it might have been a different process, but this whole thing wasn't really about me being emotionally connected to the property.
Yeah.
As long as the investment was good, I'd be happy.
Yeah, and it is sometimes hard because we do find ourselves getting a little bit emotionally connected because we see the videos of the house and the photos, and like, oh, it looks really nice, and then we have to remind ourselves, oh, I'm not the one living in it. But
100%.
But the one that we bought it looked pretty good. I would live in that one.
If I was going to relocate anytime soon, I would definitely be looking at it to live in myself.
Well, at least you have that option.
Sure.
So yeah, firstly, I guess to begin, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to get into property investing?
For sure. I am originally from the UK and moved to Sydney maybe about 9 years ago now. And my day job is digital marketing. So I work at a little advertising agency and then spend most of my time making the most of the northern beaches. But I had a little sort of pot of money in the bank that I knew I wanted to get it out of the bank because it wasn't really doing anything for me, especially with how interest rates are going right now. And I knew I'd rather have that money working for me instead. And so I'd spend a little bit of time looking at options. Do I put it into shares? What other kind of investments should I look at starting a business? And I think for me, just property made the most sense in Australia right now. With the economy being so up and down, I didn't trust myself to necessarily play the stock market in my favor, but property felt like a safer option.
Okay, what was it about property that made more sense to you compared to shares or doing a business?
Great question. What about property made more sense to me? I don't know. I think it's something a little bit more relatable, right? You know the kind of house that you would like to live in and what makes somewhere a home and what is a nice suburb in terms of infrastructure and places to go and things to do. So I think it's easier making a judgment around an investment that is something that you can relate to, rather than lithium, which I know nothing about, or crude oil prices or renewable energy. So it was something that definitely felt more relatable than some of the other investments, and that I felt like I would be able to make more of an informed decision.
Yeah. Okay. So when did you make this decision to get into property?
So I have been thinking about it probably for about a year and a half, maybe. But thinking about property consisted of, do I buy an investment property? Do I buy myself a property to live in? Do I get a short-term rental and do Airbnb? There were so many options that I went through and thought of, and yeah, I was just super aware that I don't really have the knowledge to make an informed decision about buying the right property. So I just,
Yeah.
yeah, I went around the houses and I tried to do a little bit of suburb research myself. But I just landed in a place where I think I was confusing myself more than anything. You know,
Yeah.
like the Dunning-Kruger effect, you get to a point where you are deeply aware of what you don't know. So I think I just never really made that first step to actually start more actively looking, because I was sort of spiraling down this research rabbit hole in all the directions rather than just taking one direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how long had you been, I guess, doing research and looking into it for?
I mean, yeah, probably about a year. Probably about a year. I mean,
Okay.
not active research for a year, but it's something that I would dip in and out of every so often. I'd see something that came up in an article somewhere or in the news and have a little bit of a look. But I think by the time a lot of stuff hits the media in any real sense,
Yeah.
you've already missed the growth,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, in that area. So I just always felt a little bit behind the eight ball and never found the right time or the right thing to actually make the jump with, because I didn't feel like I had enough information.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it sounds like you were kind of thinking of doing it yourself, but you never really felt confident to fully jump in and, I guess, start inspecting properties and putting down offers. Is that right? Or
100%. And I mean, before you even get to the inspecting properties area, it's like, what's the right suburb? What's the right place to
yeah.
play? You know, do I go interstate? Do I go close by? What was the right decision that was going to make it an investment versus me just buying a property that might actually not really help my money work as hard as it could?
Yeah. Yeah. And during that time, this is not planted or scripted. Had you been aware of what buyers agents do and how we could help? Had you thought about
To a
using
certain
buyers
extent,
agents?
yes, like very vaguely, but not really in a real sense. I think I was aware of it, but had Josh not introduced us, I don't think I would have necessarily taken the step to work with a buyer's agent. I think I probably would have just battled through, done it myself, and done it badly.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad I was able to help you. I'm glad you didn't do it badly.
I'm glad I didn't as well.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I guess we obviously started talking after Josh had introduced us, and we had spoken for quite some time. Are you able to just talk through the experience of, I guess, when we first started chatting and what eventually made you feel comfortable enough to, I guess, take that next step and then start looking for a property together?
Yeah, I think like that initial call when I was just, Josh had introduced us as a means for me to maybe pick your brains as somebody who knew a lot about property, him knowing that I had sort of been spiraling a little bit in terms of what direction to take. But from that first call, I think immediately I had this awareness that there is just, as much as I had a lot of thoughts in my mind, there is so much that I didn't know. And even after that first conversation, I feel like quite quickly I was like, 100% this is the right decision. I need to just work with Eric. So I know we were chatting back and forth for a bit, but I think I'd immediately already made that decision. At no point have you ever tried to push a decision on me, sell me on anything. Your approach has very much felt like you are just really trying to make sure that I am as informed as I can be to make the right decisions for me. And I think that immediately I was just like, okay, this guy is here to give me a hand and help me out to make the right decisions for myself rather than push your own agenda and just take another client off the list. So yeah, I think pretty much after that first call, I'd made the decision. I was like, this is it. Eric is the one that is going to help me get this investment property.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you thought that way. I mean, yeah, I just want to touch on that because it's not my style to try and be pushy with people that I speak to who are interested in buying a investment property or who are remotely interested in hiring me as a buyer's agent, because it is a massive decision for them to make. And I feel like putting pressure on them just makes it worse. So yeah, when we spoke, I just wanted to make sure that you were comfortable and aware so that, eventually you are in a position to make that decision, whether it is with me or not.
100%. I also think quite quickly one of the biggest, I think, benefits that I realized before we'd even started actually officially working together is the fact that it's not really just working with you, it's you and a network of people that you have as well. Because this was me buying my first property. I don't have a solicitor lined up. I don't have a mortgage broker. I don't have any of those things. So the fact that it was all there and lined up, ready to go, and with this access to all of your network was also just such a big load off to not have to worry about as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I tried. Well, I mean, these are the people who helped me with my purchases. And so, they're people that I trust, that I know do a good job. So when I do go through the same process for my clients, I use the same team that I use for myself. Yeah, so I'm glad that you got to benefit from that. I did want to bring it back to what you mentioned before about, after the first conversation, you felt really comfortable and that, you knew that you wanted to work with me. Are you able to just, I don't know, was there anything that stood out in that first conversation or any of our other conversations that I guess made you feel comfortable with wanting to work with me?
I think you find very few people that are quite so open about their own journey. There's a lot of salesmanship and smokes and mirrors and, peeking behind the curtains of things. But you have always just been super open and honest. This is my experience. This is the things I know. This is the things I don't know. This is how my portfolio is playing out now. You don't get a lot of people that are super transparent with how their own investments are running. And I think just that authenticity made a really big difference, because I didn't feel like I was chatting to a salesman. It's like you're just chatting to your mate at the pub, having a chat about how your things are working. Let's see if we can do the same thing for you.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, look, let's have a chat about the property search and let's have a chat about the property search. How did you feel about the overall process of, the properties that we looked at, the ones that we didn't go for, and then eventually the one that we got?
I'm glad you took the time up front to take me through what to expect, from the whole process and a little bit of an overview. And then going through all of the suburbs was great because, it was a lot of places that I think I never would have considered. I think knowing that you had done the research was great and sort of allowed me to then go and do my own secondary research to feel like I was validating something rather than just starting from scratch and shooting in the dark. So that whole process of our first initial call, where you took me through obviously the structure of how our time working together was going to play out and initial places that you'd been looking and what your thoughts were about each of those, that I think just was a really great way to set my expectations for the whole experience. And then, like I said, I didn't think it would happen as fast as it did. So when there was sort of properties coming in thick and fast over the next sort of couple of days and weeks, I think in the beginning it was a little bit of a shock to the system, a lot for me to take in, didn't really know what I was looking for. But that was 100% the benefit of having you there, because I think I probably have bombarded you with so many text messages over the last few weeks. What am I looking at? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? There was all of that kind of stuff that it feels like silly questions that I wouldn't have gone and asked, somebody else, but it just feels like having your mate there that you can just bounce some thoughts off and not feel like an idiot.
And it's normal to have those types of questions, especially if you've never bought a property before. You look at the property or where it's located or the way the block is shaking, like, oh, should I be going for this? Should I not? yeah, so that's what I'm here for, and that's why, yeah, there were no silly questions. Just to let you know, they were all very good questions, and yeah, I hope I was able to answer them.
100%. There were even moments where I thought in my head that I had definitely made a firm decision, and then something came up. I don't really have an example now, but
Yeah.
something came up where you sort of gave me a little bit of a different perspective to think about, and I thought, oh yeah, right, like that's not the right decision, that's not the right move for me. And it definitely just, it's like having that second layer of insight, a second perspective. Just, the more data you have going in, the more informed decision you can make, right? So it was just really great having all of the extra info from your end, just to help me validate what my thinking was, or even add to things that I hadn't even thought about.
Yeah.
Or costs that I didn't know existed, or things that are or aren't appealing for the market that is in the vicinity. Yeah.
It is definitely important to make sure that the property that we buy is not for us to live in, but it's for the people living in that suburb, the main demographic there, and making sure that it appeals to them, whether they want a garage or whether they prefer 3 bedders or 4 bedders, or close to a school, or things like that. So yeah.
And I knew none of that stuff, and you knew all of
it. Yeah. Do you remember how many properties we went for?
2?
We went for 2. We did inquire on a few others, but then we just
ended up. And I think throughout the inquiry process, there were just a couple of hesitations. I think, again, not knowing what to expect. If I had just seen those properties at face value on their own, it would have been really hard to make a decision about whether they were a good investment or a bad investment, or what the context of the market looks like outside of that. But knowing obviously that you had other clients that you'd worked with that had bought in the area, and showing me where sort of their properties sat on a scale versus the ones that we were looking at, to add that kind of context of the landscape, super helpful. All of those little bits of data that you add around the outside just helped my decision-making process to put things into context so much better.
Yeah. Okay. So the one that we ended up securing for you, how did that one stack up compared to the ones that we had, gone for, missed out on, or at least just had to walk away from because the price was getting a bit too?
Well, I think that was the thing, right? I don't know I didn't know what a good investment was versus a bad investment in terms of cost, and what that looked like, and what the upper limit of it becoming not really a viable investment, and when you're overpaying. So those are all the things that I didn't really know. The one that we ended up landing on, I think because we went interstate, I just loved that it was in such a good state to immediately have somebody else move into.
Yeah.
I don't mind a challenge. I'd be happy for a bit of a fixer-upper, but if it was nearby, when it's interstate, that becomes a little bit more of a challenge. So I just really liked that it was ready to go with a couple of minor bits to do.
Yeah.
And also, I think we'd looked at a couple of previous properties that were actually, I think, a bit more expensive, but the kitchens and the bathrooms were a little bit more dated, and I really liked that this one had been recently renovated. Those things were in really good condition, because as much as we probably could have rented it out with an older bathroom or an older kitchen, like being a renter myself right now, I know what appeals to me when I'm looking to rent something as well, and that's something that you want to be able to offer someone.
Yeah, and if it's in better condition, then you can charge more rent and be one of those better properties on the rental market to attract those better tenants. Yeah. You mentioned you didn't mind a fixer-upper. There was that one that we looked at that was a bit of a fixer-upper, and you were prepared to fly over with your partner and start tearing down some sheds and doing some landscaping.
100%. 100%. If it was short-term fixing up, you know, again, being interstate, I'd happily jump on a plane, do a couple of weeks, and then that'd be done. But anything a little bit bigger that's going to require too many tradies that are there for extended periods of time, like it just wasn't really viable for me to start thinking about that. So I'm glad that I haven't had to.
Yeah. This is more like a set and forget type thing instead of getting
100%.
But they're both good investments. They're, you know, those ones where you get a little bit more hands-on, they're good investments in their own right, because you can be the one to add that value, but you put more time into it up front, but then you can get a lot more growth in the short term. Whereas the ones that they're more like, you know, all the hard work has been done and you have less headaches and you can immediately get it onto the market a lot sooner and get it sooner.
Yeah, and I think getting it onto the market sooner and having to do less with that was a priority for me. Rather than being the person to put too much time and effort into the renovation work.
Cool. Excellent. I'm going to talk about just the overall experience of, you know, us working together. Are you able to tell me what you liked about the overall process?
So many things, Eric. So many things. It's just like having a mate at the other end of the phone. And as much as I didn't expect you to be constantly at my beck and call, because that's not cool, you were just so responsive all the time, free to, you know, listen to my ramblings and talking around in circles and, you know, add some logic to the chat and just answer all of those silly little questions. It didn't feel like this big formal process where, you know, it was overly structured in that I had to keep all of my questions for this one time a week where we were going to chat and I had to get it all out. You know, it was just this nice constant dialogue of little bits and bobs. But also I think you were really respectful of the fact that, yes, I do have a job. I'm working during the day. Sometimes life gets busy. And so, you know, you always asked, did I have time to do the conversations that we had? Did I have time to look at things? And followed up when inevitably I completely forgot. When all the things dropped off, you sent me a lot of polite nudges over the last couple of months just to remind me to do stuff, which I think I really needed. And, you know, those are things that I really liked about the experience. Excellent.
Was there anything you didn't like about the experience? And you can be as honest as you want.
Anything I didn't like, I don't think there was anything I didn't like about the experience. Things that I think I would have valued, just being slightly scatterbrained as I am. I think like a little bit of a written cheat sheet for, you know, what happens and when and who needs to know what information and what the process is going to entail. Because I think some of the most valuable conversations that we were having was, you know, you're setting the expectations for what those phases were going to look like. Having that sort of written down visually so I could digest it a little bit would have been great. But aside from that, no, I think there's nothing I didn't like about the process. I think the one thing I don't like about WA is not having a cooling off period. That gave me a lot of anxiety.
Yes. That's something that I don't like about the process at all, but it's something I can't control.
But that's not a youth thing.
And that's why I'm very big on making sure that we are very thorough and being very, you know, sure and decisive that we go for a property where we are aware of the pros and cons and very clear on whether we're going to go for it or not, because once that contract is signed, very hard to get out of it.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I could have done differently or more of?
I don't think so, because everything that you were doing was based on what I'd asked you to do. So if I'd have said, I want to only speak to you once a week and just figure it out then and consolidate all our communication, or I don't want to chat to you, I feel like you would have completely 100% respected that and been like, okay, cool, and changed your approach. Or if I'd said, I want to check in every single day, you know, and have a constant stream of madness, I think you would have made it work. I don't think there is anything that I would have thought you could do necessarily differently because you were working with me the way that I had asked you to work with me.
Yep.
You know,
I wasn't messaging or calling you too much, was I?
nope.
Okay, good.
Never.
I always have to check in with that because that is my style. I do try to make sure that I am communicating, I guess, regularly, but not unnecessarily. I want to make sure you are fully aware of everything that we are doing and you are updated every step of the way so that I'm not just coming at to you, so that I'm not just coming to you at the 11th hour saying, here's a property, sign the contract, we've got to go now. And you're like, whoa, but I've got questions. Well, you know, I was like, we'll talk about it later. I don't want it to be like that because it is a big purchase and I need you to be comfortable. Yeah.
And I didn't feel like that. There were a lot of messages. There were a lot.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just you out of the blue constantly messaging me every 2 minutes. It was, you had sent me a property to look at. I would come back with some questions and you were just giving me as much information as you could in writing. So the messages came probably in a chunk. It gave me some stuff to think about.
Yeah.
You know, if it got to the point where there were a lot of messages, we would just jump on the phone and that's totally fine. But I don't think any of it was like superfluous information and just random chit chat for the sake of it. You know, it was all useful information to me throughout the process. And I didn't once think, oh, Eric, back off.
That's my biggest fear. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm going to ask you just a couple more questions.
Well, you're all right. You didn't. I would have told you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. I'm going to ask you just a couple of questions to finish off. I'm going to ask you for a few ratings and you can give me a score out of 10. 0 being 0 or 1 being crap. 10 being really good. And you can be as honest as you want. Okay? So the first one's communication. Out of 10.
Solid 10. Easy. Yeah.
Talking about that. Yeah.
Solid 10. 100% easy.
Yeah. What about knowledge?
I would say in terms of your personal knowledge, like an 8, but I wouldn't expect you to have a 10. And in all the areas that either you didn't know the answer or didn't have the right to play, you had the right person there to help me with that. You know, you didn't try and fumble your way through any kind of conversation about the, let's say, accounting side of things. You pointed me in the right direction going, I can tell you X or Y from my experience, but this is the person that is going to be able to give you all the information. Let me introduce you. So that was great.
Cool. What about the overall outcome, specifically the property that we found and the strategy that you are now working to implement?
I would say like a 9.5.
Okay.
I think I'm really pleased with the property we landed on. The process was really smooth. It was way faster than I thought it would be, but not fast in a bad way. Yeah. Fast in a just getting in and getting it done at the right time so that we didn't lose out and didn't drag things out unnecessarily for the sake of it. Yeah, 9.5. Nailed it, Eric.
Okay. Overall experience, I think you just kind of talked through it, but I'm just going to ask again, a rating for the overall experience?
Same, 9.5.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, that's basically it. One more question, and this is just an overall question for anyone who's listening on the call. If they are on the fence, if they're looking to buy an investment property and they are on the fence as to whether they want to, you know, do it themselves or hire a buyer's agent, it doesn't have to be me, but hiring a buyer's agent in general, what would you say to them?
I would say 100% think very seriously about it. I'm so pleased that I did it. I think quite easily, obviously there's a fee involved, but quite easily, I think I would have lost way more than that fee by negotiating badly, not knowing what I was doing, not understanding what the value of certain properties was. So I would probably pay you 5 times over in reality. But yeah, I definitely think as long as you're speaking to the right people, because, you know, as with any industry, I'm sure there's some great buyer's agents and some not great buyer's agents. I would put you in with the great ones, with my wild amount of experience of those. But yeah, I think do your research, but definitely I think consider it, because I'm so pleased that I did.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your feedback, Dorothy. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, not long to go until settlement.
Anytime.
I'll be in touch in the lead up to that as well.
Oh my God.
Don't worry.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
All right. Thanks for that. I'll leave you to it. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.